You are listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Baskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Margaret Helsabeck. Over the last 30 years, Margaret has focused on leading proposal management, learning and communications across large business, winning organizations in the UK and USA. Margaret was the second UK APMP CEO and became an APMP Fellow in 2009. Margaret officially retired in 2015 and now runs Mag's Art Space, traveling, drawing, and painting. Welcome, Margaret, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
So Margaret, we're going to start a little bit with your beginnings. Where were you born and where did you go to high school and get your education?
Okay, I was actually born in a place called Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and I grew up in North Carolina, and I went to high school at a place called North Forsyth High School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then I went to university at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And there I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So that was in art education. I had intended to teach art. That's how I got started. And that degree did me almost no good at all for quite a few years until I got very lucky and I went to a job fair in Frederick, Maryland. At the time, I was taking some business courses, thinking I would rather be in business than be teaching a classroom full of little kids. So at that job fair, I met someone from IBM, and when I said I had an art degree, it was the first time in my life anyone had taken any positive notice. I usually got, well, can you type? So they were interested because at that time they had a lot of, it was in the Federal Systems Division of IBM, and they had a lot of proposal activity and critical design reviews on some major programs. And they were looking to bring a few people into their technical publications department. So at the age of, I don't know how old was I, about 31, I think, I joined IBM as a college co-op, I think is what I was called, and went to work in their technical publications department. So that's how I actually got into doing proposal management, because I started there just as it was called a publications coordinator. So what I did was work with the engineering team and the writers to take in their work. In those days, things were typed on a Magcard typewriter, and the artwork was done by the art department with on the board, not with any computers. So I was pretty much the interface between the technical team, who would be putting together huge documents, and the publishing team and the vending team to get the document produced. So that's how I got started, first working on a large critical design review, and then very soon after that, I worked on some proposal activity.
Oh, wow. What an interesting entry into the field. So you had 30 years in the field. Do you have a most memorable proposal or capture effort?
I have a lot of memorable proposals, but I'll say that I think the thing that shaped me most was very early in my career at IBM. I was a manager by then in the Tech Pubs department. Someone else went off sick, and they asked me to lead the team of I guess it was the technical publications team that was supporting a large proposal to the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Mm-hmm. And it was my first exposure, I think, to a really large competitive bid. Most of the ones I'd worked on before that had been engineering change proposals, but this was enormous and a must-win for our site and competitive. So I then had to pull together a team to support the publishing aspects of it, which was quite a task. And I'll say that I think the reason that one is so memorable is it was a huge challenge for me. I hadn't done that kind of proposal work before, but the management team on that proposal were absolutely top-notch, and I think from them I learned the most I learned anywhere about mentoring people, because they really did support me and mentor me in a fantastic way. So that pretty much shaped my expectations, I think, on how teams should work together. In those days, a lot of times, the Tech Club department was considered kind of administrative and not that important, but they included me in the top-level management meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning, 3 days a week, and they took my issues quite seriously. I know sometimes if you're in proposal support or kind of at the bottom of the food chain like that, people dismiss you and don't take your issues and problems seriously, but that team did, and it really shaped me for the rest of my career. Those individuals were amazing.
Wow, it does sound... Go ahead.
I'll say at that time, and this kind of links into how I got involved in the APMP probably, I think we were working with Shipley in the United States, so I got introduced to them and learned a little bit about their methods and was pretty impressed by that. And then later on, quite a few years later, after I moved to the UK, I got involved in some proposal activity, and I realized I really needed some help in training up a proposal team that I was working with there. So I actually contacted one of the directors from that first proposal, and I said, who was that we worked with? Do you have a contact name for me? And so he pointed me to the Shipley team. I got in touch with them, and they pointed me to the UK Shipley team. And from then on, off and on over the years, I did a lot of work with Mark Taylor, especially, and Tony Birch to some extent, but mostly I was working with Mark, and we worked together on many, many proposals.
Oh, wow. That sounds like really amazing experience. So you have experience in both the UK and the US. Did you find any similarities or differences between those two cultures?
That's an interesting question. Yes, I think to both. So the similarities were the kinds of proposals I was always working on were always big in federal or military, so there was always a big aspect of understanding the requirements, making sure that you somehow managed a team of people towards a consistent message, and boy, that is not an easy task. So I think that was the same. I think the way people worked, when I came to the UK, it surprised me a little bit, because in America, we had meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the UK, they didn't. In fact, I remember on one proposal I was working on, we had a red team review, and the results were not good. And so I stood up in front of the team and said, okay, we need to be working Saturday and Sunday. Who can I count on? And the guy who was the lead business development guy refused to come in over the weekend. So that was totally different from the kind of work ethic that I had experienced in America and with IBM. So this was a different company by then, I believe. So, yeah, it was just a different pace and different expectations. And, of course, different government regulations and those kinds of things. But that was there in both places.
Very interesting.
Thank you, Margaret. That's fascinating. And you mentioned that you were introduced to APMP while you were on the States, Margaret. I think, when did you join APMP as your member, Margaret? And what was your local chapter? Do you have any memories of the early stages of APMP back on the States?
I remember the first meeting in the UK of the APMP, and I can't remember how I found out about it. I guess somebody sent me a note and said this is going to happen, and I remembered it from the U.S. So I went along to the very first meeting, and from then on, I just kind of followed what was going on with it. So I think we only had one UK chapter, and I can't remember where that first meeting was. Actually, might have been someplace like Guildford. I can't remember for sure, but it was in the southeast.
Sure, Margaret.
And yeah, so I got involved from the very first meeting, and I don't know. I think I was the second CEO, so it must have been a year after that, a year or so after that I became CEO, and I think I did it for 2 years for some reason. I was looking for punishment, or I'm not quite sure what, but it was a fun time. It was challenging, and we had a lot of enthusiastic people. I had people on my board that were so knowledgeable and enthusiastic and wanting to really grow the APMP, and they have done. It's been a fantastic organization.
Yes, Margaret. But before you came to UK to set up the APMP UK with few people here, Margaret, did you also had a glimpse of APMP back on the States? Did you attend any BitCon back on the days when you were there in US?
I knew of the APMP. I do not think that I was a member, because there was a period of time right before I came over here where I was not doing proposal.
Right.
I was doing something else. I just know I was aware of it. I may have been aware of it through Shipley. I don't know. But I was not a member in the States that I remember.
Okay. So very early, so I would assume like 2003-04, you were part of APMP UK, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So when was your last BitCon here in UK, Margaret?
What was the last bid I worked on?
Last kind of APMP related bid conference that you attended or you have some memories with?
Oh dear, I don't remember. Let's see. I remember. I think it was 2009. I became a fellow, and I remember going to that one. I can't remember if I went. How many of them? I guess I did go to some after that. I just remember that one because I had no plans to go to the conference. I was actually working on a proposal up in Leicester, I believe it was.
Okay.
And somebody called me and said, "Your name's not on the list. Aren't you coming?" And I said, "No, I can't. I'm in the middle of a proposal. I haven't even registered." And they said, "No, you have to come. You have to come because you're going to be presented with an award." So I said, I can't do that. They said, "Just come for the one night." And I said, "Well, I don't even have the right clothes to wear because, I've packed work clothes." And they said, "It doesn't matter." So anyway, that's what I did. I think that conference was in London around Heathrow, I believe. And so I just drove down in an afternoon and went to the dinner and the awards, and then I think I had to drive back the next day to get stuck back in on that proposal. And I'm sure I went to some after that, but that's a memorable one.
Wow. And is it the same time, Margaret, that you had your last bid? When was the last time you finished, this is my bid, now I'm retiring? What triggered that?
So it's interesting. Before I retired, I was working for BAE Systems at the time, and I had worked all around different sites around the M25 in Scotland. I had an organization that did proposal support throughout our division. So I was going all around, and then I changed jobs again, and I ended up coming to Portsmouth to work. I can't remember what they called the division then, but it was on the naval base down here. And I came down to set up a department that was meant to improve business winning and, bid management, all of that kind of thing. They kind of recruited me down to do that. And I did that for a year or so. And then they had a big shakeup in the top level management, and our managing director went, and then my boss went. So I was then among the people that were going to be redeployed or made redundant. And so I said that I would like to leave, and they said, really, we got other things you can do. And I said, yeah, but I think it's time for me to leave. And they said, okay, but would you consider working on a proposal before you left? So I said, sure. And so we pretty much took apart the department I had put together, which that's kind of soul-wrenching and not very much fun, but we did that. And then I went to work on a support proposal that was support to the aircraft carriers. And that was fascinating to be amongst at the time they were building the carriers. And that was a whole new kind of aspect for me, because I'd worked on a lot of things that were not so tangible as big, huge chunks of steel that you could climb around on. So I saw all that going on. And then the proposal that I worked on as bid manager, I guess, was in support of those carriers and how they were going to have to alter the infrastructure around the naval base in order to get something that big in and provide electricity to it. And it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So I was suddenly without the people management responsibility and kind of back working hands-on like I had done for so many years, and I just totally enjoyed it.
Wow, Margaret, that's classic. And so when did the transition from proposal graphics, proposal management to MAG's art space began, Margaret?
So I left BAE Systems in 2012, I believe. And then I spent 3 years doing some consulting for Harmonic down in Somerset. And I don't know, I guess we got to a stage about 2015 where I felt like I was ready to retire. So I did. And since then, I just kind of do what I want to do, which is hang out in my studio and draw pictures and travel and visit family and cook and do as many creative things as I possibly can.
And how did you start why do you make art? What triggered you, Margaret?
Why do I make art? I don't know how not to. I just have a creative, a need to do something creative all the time. And I think when I was growing up, I just loved to draw, and it seems like I was better at them than I am now, the way I'm feeling today. But anyway, it was something that I enjoyed and I was good at. So I made up my mind that when I retired, I wanted to take up the art again, because I hadn't really done any for 30 years, and I wanted to improve my drawing and painting skills. And the other thing that I wanted to do was learn a bit about page layout and document design. So it was the kind of thing I'd watched people working for me do for years, and I always had an opinion. And I think my art and design background was very helpful in that role, but I didn't know the tools, so I've spent some time learning a few things, and so that's just what I always wanted to do when I retired.
Perfect, Margaret. So what advice will you give an emerging artist, Margaret?
Emerging artist, draw every chance you get.
Nice.
It just is, the more you practice, the better you're going to get.
Right. Of course, Margaret. That's brilliant. Thank you, Margaret.
Wow. So it sounds like you've really been enjoying retirement, and I think we all hope we can be there someday. So we've gotten you with some kind of questions about your background and proposals and arts. We're going to move into some kind of random fun questions. So can you tell us 3 things not many people know about you?
Well, when I was growing up, I worked on the tobacco farm in the summers. I was in North Carolina, and when I went to college, I worked in the cigarette factory to put myself through college. And I was married for quite a while to a minister, and that's not what everyone expects of me. But I also have 2 sons who are grown, and I have 3 grandchildren, 2 step-granddaughters, and a grandson who is 6 months old, and the apple of my eye.
Wow, what a great family.
Yeah.
So who is the kindest person you know?
The kindest person I know. Well, I'm going to say that one of the kindest persons I've ever known was my ex-mother-in-law, who passed away last year, but he was just an exceptionally kind and caring person.
Wow. So we might know the answer to this, but we'll see if we're surprised. What was your best subject in school?
I'll do art and English and drama.
Okay. Yep. No surprises there.
Surprise, no.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? Why or why not?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? It is because you put it in bread. Or
Okay.
it's because you eat it without the bread.
Great. When you're having a bad day, what do you do to make yourself feel better?
I look at a picture of my grandson and I play some good music.
That's great. What would your pet say about you if we asked for a reference?
What would my pet say?
Yeah. Hypothetical pet if you don't have one.
Oh, yes. What would my pet say? It would be a cat, and the cat would know that I absolutely adored them, and he or she would say they could do whatever they wanted.
Kind of like a grandchild, right?
Yeah.
Is there an artwork that you're most proud of? Why?
I guess there is. I did a series last year of animals, and I did those especially for my grandson's nursery. So he has a series of watercolor paintings, 8 different animals in his nursery. So I think those are probably the ones I'm proudest of.
Oh, wow. They sound beautiful.
Fun and colorful, and, they had a predetermined destination. So it was quite a fulfilling project to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your most important artist tool?
My most important what?
Tool that you use to for art.
Cool.
So painting, drawing. Which is your favorite tool?
So I prefer, my media preferences are pen and ink and watercolor, or some combination of those. I like to work quickly. I'm not someone who likes to do a lot of detail, so that's why I enjoy watercolor and pen and ink.
That's great. All right, last one. USA or UK, and why?
Wow, that's not fair. So I'm going to say UK, and the reason is because it is much easier here to get out into the countryside and have a walk, and it is at least, I mean, we do have traffic and those kinds of things, but in America, it seems like everything is centered around shopping and getting in the car and going to the shops, and you spend a lot of time at stoplights, whereas here it's just, the countryside is just much more open to and accessible, so that you can go out walking in the countryside, and everything doesn't revolve around going to the shops. It seems like when I'm in America, I'm constantly going out to the shops. I used to say that in America, you know, so when you meet somebody in the UK, kind of the first thing they ask you is, where are you going on holiday next? And in America, it's more like, about watching football, or what you've bought recently. So, and I'm not, I mean, I like football, okay, but I'm not a big fan. It's not the cultural turn on for me that it is for a lot of people. So I think in the UK it's just much richer culturally, as well as having the access to the outdoors. And I know that depends in America where you live. Different places have better access than others.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. The UK does place a bigger focus on holiday and spending time outdoors and kind of the life outside of work. And there's less of that, I feel like, in the US. That's great. Thank you.
That's great, Margaret. So you already mentioned one person, Margaret, but let's try a few more. Who are the people in your life or in your career who you are be more grateful for, Margaret, for everything that they've given to you?
In my career, so I can name a few. Do you want me to name names?
Yes, please.
I'm trying to remember some of the early ones. I don't even remember their names. I remember one of the guys on that first proposal I talked about. His name was Dave, and I can't remember his last name right now. I do remember a couple of people, other of the directors associated with that proposal, who had a tremendous influence on me and mentored me for years. And one's name was Tom Welch, and one was Ken Deal. And then once I got to the UK, I was fortunate enough, after a while, to be the executive assistant to a man named Galen Ho. And Galen was very good to me, gave me a lot of opportunity. And I learned a whole lot from all of those people. There are plenty others too, but those are the ones that kind of pop out in my mind.
Perfect, Margaret. So how about in your life, Margaret? Any people, all the journey from where you were in North Carolina all the way now in painting? You can list as many people as you want, Margaret.
certainly my current partner, Mervyn Bonson, is a big part of my life.
And you already mentioned, Margaret, while touching on the arts, what's the advice? But in general, Margaret, what's the best piece of advice that you have received from and from whom?
So this is a good piece of advice, I think, for all of us now. And this, when I first came to the UK, I came over with IBM, and we were working on a program called Merlin. It was a helicopter program. And one of our managing directors used to say this repeatedly at any meeting we had, and it did make an impression. And I think it applies wherever you are, not just at work. But he used to say, we have to earn our reputation every single day. So his point was, we can't afford to let things slip and slide. Every day is a new day, and every day you earn your reputation. I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard.
Wow, that's really brilliant one, Margaret. Thank you.
So Margaret, you've had a great career and you've had so many successes. If someone asked to be your apprentice and learn from you everything that you know, what would you teach them?
What would I teach them? Is this specific to proposal work?
It could be specific to whatever you think would be important to teach them.
I think it's quite important to know how to listen and to consider other people's views. I'm not saying by any means that I knew how to do that, but I think that's an important thing to be able to do, and to be compassionate.
That's great advice.
Things probably work at still.
Yeah, no, great. So you're keeping busy traveling and drawing and painting. Is there anything else that's next for you?
I also love to cook, and I always said I was going to write a cookbook, but then I started working on the art aspects of it, and I got more involved in that than actually doing all the science required to do a real cookbook. So instead, I just make up stuff.
That sounds
great. And I'll
great.
probably continue down that route. I might actually pull them all together in a book at some point.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Margaret, for your time. It's been a privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health. Keep continuing with your artwork, and wish you all the happiness. Please continue to inspire every single person around you, Margaret. Thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, thank you. I hope that was useful.
100%.
It was great, Margaret.
All right. You take care.
Thank you, Margaret.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Baskar Sundaram,
signing off.